Hello, my name's Julie from So Unique and welcome to another episode of How I Make. Well, this video has been requested by a customer and it's going to be all about making bunting out of a panel. Now, I do sell these panels in my shop, but they've actually all gone now. And this customer I'm not sure if she's made bunting before or not, but she wasn't sure what to do. Now, normally when you buy panels, you usually get a list, instructions on there, but there is nothing on here. So I suppose for anybody who's a beginner or who's never sewn before, I'll not really have an idea. Anyhow, this panel, all it tells you on here is the bunting flags include seam allowance, and that's it. So what I thought I'd do is I would make this little video and just show how I make the bunting from a panel. Now, as you can see, they are pretty close together, which that's quite okay. So what you need to do is obviously unfold your bunting panel, and then you need to get it ironed because there are creases. So I use a bit of starch on mine, so I spray the starch on the back and then turn it over and iron it on the front. So I'm going to go and do that, and I will be back in a few minutes. And that's the panel ironed now, so don't feel that you have to have starch and you've got to go and run out and buy it, because you don't need it. I always use spray starch on my fabrics because it sort of crisps your fabric up a bit, and it does help with fraying as well. And it's something I always like to do, but like I say, you don't have to do that. Right, so the panel's all pressed. Now you can see you have a bit of a gap between your flags. So what I'm going to do to make things easy for myself is to get a pair of scissors and cut down this central line here, and do that all along the panel. I'll just move my iron over a little bit. It would make it a lot easier if we were working on an ironing board or a table. I've only got a small amount of space, I'm afraid. Right, there we go. So I'm going to pop that out of the way for a minute. So we are left with one piece. Now, if you've got a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, you could use that now. If not, you've got a pair of scissors, just use scissors. Now excuse me. Now your seam allowance is already built in, so what we need to do now is just cut round each flag. So I will do one with scissors, and then I will probably get my rotary cutter out because it'll be quicker. But like I say, you don't need to go and run out and buy a rotary cutter if you haven't got one. Do the top bit. There we go. Right, so that is the first flag cut out. So what I'm going to do now, off camera, I'm going to get the rest of the flags cut out, and then I will be back with you shortly. And also I'd just like to mention, yes, you've got 28 flags here, but if you think about where your bunting's going, now say you're having a party in your garden and you want it to go down your fence and you've got quite a long garden, what you can do is each one of these you could back with a different colour fabric. If it's going up against your fence, you could put any colour you wanted on, and then alternate your flags with some plain fabric, like just have white, red and blue fabric, so you can have them in between your main Union Jack flags, and that'll spin out a panel. So that's a good idea. I know some people might not want to back it or anything. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. Just think sort of where you're going to put your bunting. Now, like I said, I'm going to put mine in my window at the shop, so I'm going to put just 2 of these together because I don't need a lot of bunting. I've only got a small window. I think my window might be about 5 foot wide, so I'm just going to sew 2 of these together like so. I'm going to get back to cutting out, so I've got 2 more strips to do, and then I'll be back with you to share sort of 2 different ways that I use of sewing my bunting together. And also I just thought I'd mention the flags. You've got a dark blue, the white and the red one, and also there's another blue one which is the same colour as, I suppose, the sort of the background between the flags, so just be careful when you're cutting that. So this is one I've just roughly cut out. So if you follow your straight line there and your straight line there and put your ruler on there, you'll be able to go top to bottom and you should get a perfect flag. So I just thought I'd mention that just in case it confused you a little bit and you didn't know where to cut. But you can see on that side there's not much there, but you've got the straight part of the side of the crown. So I would do this side first and then do this side next. So I'm just going to do that now. So I will show you what I mean. Right, you can see this one, you've got a straight edge there. So I'm going to pop the ruler on. So now that's my cutting line. Let's find my cutter. I've got a nice straight edge there. I think I could take a little bit more off that. That looks better. That's it. Now I'm going to turn it round, and then I'm going to pop my ruler along there, along the edge of that crown, and my ruler there has joined up to the bottom point. So there we go. So that is cut out perfectly. Now comes the time that you need to sort out your front and back of your bunting. Now I'm going to show you how I'm actually putting this bunting together for the shop. This is the first way, and then I will sort of quickly just explain the other way to do it. Now you might find when you've cut out your bunting that 2 triangles might not fit together very well. Now I'm doing mine wrong sides together for sewing, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pinking shears, or I've got a rotary cutter that's like that, and that's your pinking shears. It's got a serrated edge, so that's what I'm doing because it's quick, it's easy, it's only going up in my window, it doesn't have to be fancy. So what I'm going to do is pop this one together. Now, I mean, you don't have to pin anything, but I'm going to use these clips, and I just want to show you something. Right, as you can see, that looks a bit, oops, wait a minute, that looks a bit squiffy because you can see the bottom of the fabric. But if you just sort of gently, I mean, don't pull it to stretch your fabric, but if you just pull it over a little bit, it should line up. Now what I would do now is just check the other side and make sure that is okay, and that looks fine. Just put that up there. See, the bottom one's a little bit bigger on that side, so that would be the side I would sew on. Now you want to stitch 1/4 inch seam all the way around. So what you would do, I don't know if I can see this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this marker pen just so you can see how you stitch. So you will stitch 1/4 inch down here, and you need to sort of stop around about there, 1/4 inch, and I'll show you that on the machine. So you've still got a bit of point. Goodness me, you can't see, can you? Right, I'm going to take this to the machine so you can see better. Okay, I hope you can see this okay. Right, I've got a 1/4 inch foot on my machine. It's got a little bar here which goes down the side of this fabric, so I get a nice straight seam, but you don't need that. You can just put a piece of masking tape on your plate here, so from your needle, or you've got measurements on the little plate at the side on the needle plate, just so you know, just have a look at that. Right, so always do a reverse stitch. So now I'm going to stitch down this side. I'm going to do it slowly so it's not too noisy, so you can still hear my got a bit of a frog in my throat today. So there we go. Now I'm just going to do this by eye because I know sort of roughly what 1/4 inch looks like when I'm sewing. So I'm going to take it down, and I'm going to stop there so you can sort of see how much fabric I've got. So it's needle down, spin your fabric round, and foot down, and I've got a perfect 1/4 inch seam on my bunting. So I'm going to stitch up this side. Right, so I'm going to not do it too fast. I hope this is not too loud for you. So I'm just going to take that off. So go right to the top and then just do a little reverse stitch at the top. Right. So that is me stitched all the way around. I know I've got a mark on there, but that will iron off because it's a special pen. So now I'm going to get on and get the rest of the flags stitched together, and then I will be back with you to show you the next step. And this is the other way of stitching your bunting. You put right sides together, and then I have pinned it all the way around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, same again, 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, and then I'll be back with you. Don't forget to do your reverse at the top and when you finish off as well. You don't want it coming undone. Right, well, with this bunting, what you would do now is just trim probably about 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and where the point is you would sort of go across there, but make sure you taper both sides here to the point, otherwise it'll be too bulky. Now I'm not going to cut this because my bunting, what I want for the window, is going to be like this. So I'm just going to sort of just show you what to do. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just back in a second. I want to get a stick. Right, so what we'll do now is we're going to turn this through, and then you'll very, very carefully just put your point out a little bit. Now remember, mine's not going to be perfect because I've not cut the excess off, because obviously I don't want to do it this way this time. Now that's not a bad point. Right, so that's what it will look like, which is really, really nice. So what you would do all your flags like this, and then you would press them. And what I tend to do is then stitch all the way around with 1/4 inch seam allowance again. So yeah, just watch your point all the way around. And I did forget to say don't stitch the top together as well. Yeah, so just do that and then press them, and then we'd put the bias binding on then. So what I'm going to do, like I said, I've just showed you, so that's the other way of doing it. So I've stitched all my flags together because I'm doing it this way. So now I will show you how I'm going to trim the edges, and then we'll put the bias binding on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got my pinking shears, so I'm just going to cut on the 2 sides. Now don't go near your stitching, we don't want that, otherwise your flag will come apart. So this could take a while to do, but it's a nice, I suppose, satisfying little job. So that's one side, and I'm just going to do the other side. There we go. So that's how we cut it out with pinking shears. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the rest of these flags out, and then I will be back with you. Right, well, I've got 14 flags here, all sewn and pinked. So now it's time to get the binding on. Now, binding, this is quite cheap really. I sell this in my brick and mortar shop, and it's only 30p a metre, so I suppose that's about 1 inch wide really. You don't really need anything expensive when it's binding to do bunting with. I mean, I think if you're selling it, then yeah, why not? You probably might need a little bit better binding, but this is what I've always used for making my bunting. Excuse me a minute, that's my cat. Sorry about that. Elsa was outside, one of my cats, and it started to rain, so she's come to complain at my door to let her in the house. Anyhow, where was I? Binding. Right. Yes, so this is all you need. I mean, I think some people might use a bit of tape, but we are going to enclose our open edges in the centre of this. Now, you do need to sort of work out how much you're going to need. Depends where you're going to put it. It depends if you're going to sort of swag, you know, sort of scallop down a fence, or is it just going to go in your window? So you have to do a bit of maths there, a bit of measuring. Right, so I'll show you how to put the binding on. Okay, so the binding, it is relatively stiff, so you can finger crease it, because I don't actually iron this. all you need to do is fold it in half and just crease it with your finger. Now you can choose to do this for the full length that you want. You can pin your flags in, so then you go and sit at the sewing machine to sew and you can have all that on your lap. I tend to just fold and pop a flag in as I go along because I find it easier, and then I don't get my clips caught on the front of the sewing machine and I don't get pins in my legs. So what you need to do as well, I would leave a good spare piece so you can use this for, you can always, when you know where it's going, you can always fold that bit over after you've stitch your bunting on and make a loop so it can just be hung up. But if you know your measurements, then that's that. But for me, at the minute, I'm not quite sure where it's going to go in my window, so I'm going to leave, I don't know, maybe a good 12-inch. Right, so then all you do is I'm going to pop the raw edge of the bunting just inside the bias binding, sort of push it down. I'm going to use some clips here so you can see what I'm doing. So here we go. So I have got my first flag in the bias binding. Then you've got to decide how big a gap you want between each flag. Now, as I've got a small window, I don't want a big gap, but if you're going down the side of a fence or if you're going across a room, you can have a bigger piece, sort of maybe something like that. But as I'm not, I need a smaller gap. Now you can measure all this, or you can just do it by eye. I tend to just do it by eye and use my sewing machine as a guide, really. So let's have a look. I'm just going to pop this one in. So yeah, I quite like that, I think. So I'm just going to pop these two together like this, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and then I'll just show you what I'm doing. So I'll just click it on and then we can get sewing. So, as you can see, my gaps swap maybe about 1.5 inches. About 1.5 inches, let's have a look. Yeah, it is actually, it's about 1.5 inches. That's good. I'm not sure what that is in centimetres. I haven't got a ruler that's centimetres, I'm afraid. It's alright. So I shall see you at the sewing machine. Okay, well, I'm just going to start sewing this part of the binding. And I have put red thread in my bobbin and on the top stitch as well, because I didn't really want white because it would stand out too much for me. So I'm just going to stitch across the top of the first flag. Hope you can see this okay. Right. So that's my first flag. So I've just come to the end of my first flag. So as I look at my second flag, I can see that it's just slightly below this part of my needle plate, so that's sort of my marker now, so I know where to put my next flag in. So I will quickly stitch the next one on and show you what I mean. Right, so I've just come to the end of that flag, so I'm just going to fold this bias binding over and just crease it. Right, I'm going to get my next flag, pop it into the binding. I think what I'll do is I will put a couple of pegs on it, clips on it I mean. Right, so I know that's got to go there, so I've got just that little bit of a gap. So I will put a clip on. And there we go. I can take my clip off now and then I can just get stitching. Then I'm going to get on with this and then I will be back when I've stitched all the flags on. And that's my first piece of bunting done, so there we go. I've left a long enough piece, so I will make my loop at a later date when I actually come to put the bunting up in my shop. So we have 14 flags and I've just got another one to do because I'm going to have 2 strips of bunting in my shop window. So I hope you enjoyed that and I hope you find it useful. I know it's not going to be probably everybody's cup of tea who generally follows me, because most people will probably know how to do bunting, but it's ideal for anybody that's new, anybody that's new to sewing I should say, anybody who's not sure. So I hope you find it useful and thank you for joining me. And if you've got any questions, please leave them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if there's anything you would like to see how I make, I'm quite happy to share what I can with you. So until next time, I will see you all again soon and bye for now.